Hello, Marianne Kilkenny here. Welcome. Good to see you all. Women living in community is my rap. So, I'm here to tell you about my very favorite community experience. It was called Glenway House. You might wonder why Glenway House. Well, it was on Glenway Drive, and it wasn't called that when I moved in, but it became known as Glenway House through the years, and I will tell you a little bit about how it came to be called that and be so beloved by me and some other people that I know well. So you've heard me probably hear about sort of the three pillars of community, and that's place, people, and personal tools. And what that is that it's easier if I have three P's going on. So this place. Let me tell you about Glenway House as it became known. It was a very odd house for your regular family, I would guess, because it's four separate living spaces. One was like an ensuite or a mother-in-law unit that was completely contained. So it's in a lovely neighborhood, had a beautiful washer and dryer, long front porch, big screened-in back porch, beautiful garden all around it, in a lovely, lovely, lovely neighborhood. Well, this particular house had two kitchens and an upstairs and a downstairs, and it was obviously very large. So the place itself was a beautiful setting. And the question becomes, in all of the living areas were different sizes for different amounts of money. And how the question becomes, how did I get there in particular? Just to fill you in a little bit, I was living by myself and talking about community for many years because I went to Glenway in 2011. And how it happened was I knew what I wanted. I wanted to know the kind of people I wanted to live with and their values. I knew what I wanted to share and didn't want to share. And so the ensuite, or the suite as I called it, was a perfect place for me and my two cats. So I could say when it came up, this is something that I want. This is something I can do. And because the place was really perfect, I love that part of town, and I knew that. And the next thing was, of course, the people. Now, the people that had encouraged me to live there were people who I had met at a meetup, who wanted to live in community, who had lived in community, who were promoting it and as a way of living. So I felt very much like we had shared values when it came to that. And I actually was the last person that enrolled in this experience because it was time, even though it was a huge leap, but because I really knew this was the next stop for me in my community experiences. So one of the things that was interesting about the people there is none of the people that lived there owned the house, which I think is a huge plus from a power dynamic standpoint. And the couple that owned it were very much excited and interested in using their house. It was a house that they had rented to have a shared living experience, especially for people as we age, which is what we are. So they were part of the community experience. And the thing that was a little unusual about that is that we had separate leases with that particular person. We didn't call him a landlord. We weren't tenants. It was very much the languaging as well as the experience of living in community, because we all wanted that to have that kind of experience. The other thing we were able to do was we were able to select the people that lived in the house. So you can imagine there was a win-win on that, because they had people that liked each other and lived together harmoniously, and they were able to collect their rent and be part of the community as well and know that their house was getting well taken care of. So the next thing was the personal tools piece of this. So we've got the people, we've got the place, and we have the personal tools. Well, many of us were very familiar with the blueprint of we, which at the time was called the State of Grace document. And what that is a way to get to know people at a much deeper level and to have a document together that you agree on, you can refer to, and it's dynamic, meaning you can change it. Something comes up about how you interact with people, what happens when you're on a good day or a bad day. It's a really in-depth way of getting to know other people, and you can always go back to it. So that is a really important part of it. And the other thing as far as tools is we had agreements that we would meet every week. If we were eating together, we'd have a separate kind of more agenda-related meeting. And we also shared at least once a week some interpersonal tool that we were growing with, or that we were aware of, or that we wanted to share with the others in the house. So that way we were able to gain more information at the same time of getting more and more in-depth knowledge of each other. So it was a really rich experience. So some people say, ooh, shared housing, I had a bad experience. Well, I didn't. I had wonderful experiences. One in particular that I remembered was I was making something and I needed honey. And I had no honey. So I texted some of the other folks that live there. And within, I'd say, I didn't time it, 3 or 4 minutes, 2 people were standing there at my door after they knocked, of course. And that was with honey. So I didn't have to go to the store. I didn't have to do any of that kind of thing. There they were. And I was able to continue on and not have a gap in any way that was really important. So the other thing was a funny one. I went to get an egg out of my egg carton in my refrigerator. And there was a bunch of white eggs and a little brown egg. And the brown egg had a face on it, a little smiley face. So I surmised from that somebody had probably borrowed an egg and replaced it with another egg, which really, it had to make me laugh. And one of my most endearing things that happened just organically, and that was that the front light in the house was kept on until all of us, all of our cars and us, were back in the house and safe. And then the light went out. So it was a really warming experience to drive up and see the light was still on because I was the last one in. So that always made me feel like I was coming home to a warm house where people were expecting me, which was really a wonderful experience. The other thing that house allowed me to do was have meetups. You remember meetups when we were meeting in person? And that was people would meet each other, we'd have a topic, we'd talk about things about living in community, and they could also experience what a shared house looked like. And this had huge value because people would walk into my area and upstairs to another person's area and see the vaulted ceiling and say, I could live here. And downstairs are the 2 other places, and the kitchen and the living room and the dining room that was shared. And at one point, I remember at a meetup, there were 20 cars in our driveway. Very difficult to park that many cars in a round driveway, but we managed to do it. And it was a whole nother experience of getting along, of parking all those cars. And people were so aware of, I watched the lights go on and women could say, I could live here. And that's what I was trying to get through with the meetups, meeting other people, seeing the possibilities that happen when you actually do it. And what the house and my experience at Glenway were able to do, were able to have the media attracted through my website, that was Women for Living in Community, to visit us. And you'll be able to see in the links below that my wonderful, wonderful colleague Todd has posted. And back in 2011, NBC News came and filmed us. And then since then, there's been a PBS where they used our house with a variety of different housemates. And AARP, the New York Times was visited us a couple times. And that's because we were living in a way that was an alternative housing option for elders, which is exactly what I'm a proponent of doing. So I hope that this has helped you to open some doors to you to look at the possibilities that might be the avenue for you, which would actually help you. And what it did for me is it made it possible for me to move on, give you advice like this, to write a book, Your Quest for Home, Finding Your Ideal Community in Later Life. I used a lot of the knowledge and the experiences that I learned at Glenway in that book. And the amazing thing, but not so amazing, is I have lived with two of the folks that I lived there with, both the beginning of this year, and I currently live with another one. So the experience continues because of the basis of people, place, and having the right personal tools. I don't seem to be able to say that. So I'm glad you're with me. Next week, I will not be here. I'm going to be taking a class, but I hope that I'll see you the following Monday. And in the interim, I hope you're well. And remember, connection, information, and taking action.